I put my PC in the back of a car. It was a really heavy PC and tower and my monitor into my car, into the back office of the venue, ran 30 feet of audio cables, put the audio into a cheap sound blaster card, connected my dial-up, my 56K dial-up, and sent an audio stream up to the server and then promoted the live stream in January 2000, 26 years ago, in chat groups and forums, and had people listening around the world with a DIY cobbled together live audio stream solution.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So in college, throwing house parties, taking that to seriously the next level. And 26 years ago, long before YouTube or anything else like what we know today, live streaming house parties.
When
Cool.
there was no cloud and you needed a physical machine with a lease line.
Welcome to Entrepreneurism. I'm your host, Scott Pollock, a seasoned business leader, entrepreneur, and CEO coach with a passion for helping others achieve success in their entrepreneurial journeys. On this show, we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, uncovering why so many struggle and revealing what the most successful do differently. True entrepreneurs have unique superpowers, including the ability to spot hidden business opportunities and convert them into thriving ventures. For most mere mortals, this ability is absolutely unfathomable. But these same strengths can become sources of struggle, whether it's pursuing multiple opportunities without losing focus, scaling without eroding culture, or balancing short-term demands with long-term vision. The entrepreneur's journey is full of tensions. Here we explore critical factors that drive entrepreneurial success. How to stay focused, manage resources, build strong teams, and develop the resilience to navigate the ups and downs of the journey. Bold ideas, candid conversations, and insights that will help you unlock your full potential. Ready to learn and grow, expand your toolkit, and discover actionable strategies to help you navigate your own entrepreneurism? Let's dive in. Really excited to welcome to the podcast Ritesh Patel, a fintech-minded founder helping independent promoters compete with the big boys in live entertainment. Welcome, Ritesh.
Hey, Scott. How you doing?
Great to have you. So Ritesh is the co-founder and co-CEO of Ticket Ferry, the Y Combinator-backed company he launched with his brother, Jigar, in 2011. Over the years, Ticket Ferry has evolved from a smarter ticketing and event marketing platform into a broader infrastructure play for the live events industry, combining software, AI-powered tools, payments, multi-currency banking, and access to working capital. With more than 300 million in ticket sales processed across tens of thousands of events, Ritesh is continuing to scale at the intersection of live entertainment, fintech, and cutting-edge technology. Ritesh, perhaps you can start by telling us more about how you started your entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. I'm older than I'd like to admit. And,
You and I both.
and I said to someone the other day that, when I first started coding, I had to save my code to tape. And they were like, what does that mean? I was like, well, 1989, when you had text only Commodore 64 computers and everything that you didn't even use a mouse, you had to save your code to tape. And I guess like a combination of that old, but also I started really early. I started, when I was 9 years old, coding when I was 9, but started building software products 13 and got my high school to adopt them. And then again at 16 and got my high school to adopt that. And then I started white labeling that software for other schools and like incorporate a company at 16. And so like this was all very, very early and not what a normal 16-year-old
Amazing.
does.
So an entrepreneur from the get-go.
Yeah, I know. And it's like one of those things where I could have had a way simpler life than I do. And it would have been much more, I would have had my youth and I would have had my innocence and preserved that for way longer than I actually did.
So fast forward from writing software when you were a student and starting, businesses there to how you got to Ticket Ferry. and getting that going?
So because I'd already been building products in high school, when I got to university for computer science, I kind of, you go into like computer science 101 essentially, you're like, oh, what's a linked list and what's a tree? And, you know, you're doing very like algorithmic based classes, and it kind of got pretty boring, right? So simultaneously, I was living in a house with a bunch of guys that has had next to no noise pollution issues. And it was kind of like big house surrounded by a garden, like official kind of botanic landscape gardens, surrounded by a forest. And just so happened that one of the guys in the house had a really big sound system and turntables. And we decided to throw these very big house parties of 300 to 400 people. And
Where was this?
uh,
Where was this university that you were going to? This is pretty cool.
this is in Bristol in the west of England, and a city known for its music culture, even today. And the guy who was kind of like the looking after the house was he wasn't a university member of staff. He was just a more mature student. Like he was like a master's or a PhD or whatever it was. And we were like, hey, can we throw a party? And he was like, yep, go for it up, which is fantastic. And there was like 20 bedrooms. So there was, no, it was a big house. And then I got addicted to the concept of gathering people together and marketing parties, and said to the guy who had the sound system in the house, I was like, should we approach a nightclub and actually do it properly and like book some DJs and, really like, see what we can do. And ended up getting given a Saturday night, one of the top concert venues in the city. Somehow they were like, yeah, we'll give two 19-year-olds like a weekend date without having any track record. And I took that. Now I know it's a pattern. I took that to the extremes and called an artist booking agency and said, hey, I want to book the four biggest DJs you have, please. And they were like, well, usually you'd only like book two. Four is ridiculous. I was like, no, I want four. Give me your biggest four. And then we announced the gig. And being a nerd, I, there was a guy I was talking to in a music chat room, and I knew he was a sysadmin data center. And I was like, here's an idea. If I give you some software to install on one of your machines, would you do that? And he was like, okay, what for? And I was like, well, I want to live stream this club show, this gig I'm throwing. And I need an actual machine that's got a high speed connection. And I want to send audio to it. And so he was like, cool, I'll even drive down to the event. And we ended up, I put my PC in the back of a car. It was a really heavy PC and tower and my monitor into my car, into the back office of the venue, ran 30 feet of audio cables, put the audio into a cheap sound blaster card, connected my dial-up, my 56K dial-up, and sent an audio stream up to the server, and then promoted the live stream in January 2000, 26 years ago, in chat groups and forums, and had people listening around the world with a DIY cobbled together live audio stream solution.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So in college, throwing house parties, taking that to seriously the next level, and 26 years ago, long before YouTube or anything else like what we know today, live streaming house parties.
When
Cool.
there was no cloud and you needed a physical machine with a lease line. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay. Well, I like that. That's next level, and that becomes a bridge into live events. I love that.
correct. So I spent the next 10 years essentially doing a day job in tech, evolving from like corporate IT into development at agencies, into ad tech, and simultaneously produced about 500 events.
Well, okay. So take us now to 2011 and the founding.
Um, yeah, I mean, the idea for the company was actually even earlier than that. It was 2009, but I think my extreme ADHD meant that I didn't actually knuckle down and, and write the code. But, but having produced that many events over the best part of a decade, you kind of realize that it's very difficult and nothing goes to plan and you have very limited resources. And as I was working in ad tech, the inspiration for the company was apply ad tech principles to live events and turn every ticket buyer every attendee of an event into an affiliate and track it. And basically, as they buy their ticket, tell them you can have that money back if you can help to market the event for us and bring more people,
Aha.
and use cookies and attribution and ad tech principles to track it, and then eventually refund them back a portion of all of their money. And that was
Yeah.
the original concept of Ticket Fairy, was harness people who are willingly giving you money to come to your events. You just need more of those people, and you don't have enough money to market to get those people.
Got it. So, sort of combination of digital marketing and multi-level marketing and ad
Yeah.
tech and
Yeah, very much so. And ad tech and fan rewards and consumer psychology and, everything
yeah,
combined.
gamification was in there, I'm sure. And
Yep. Yep.
yep.
Gamification, leaderboarding, like like feedback loops for dopamine hits, and, calls to action upon each successful thing. Yeah, we did all of it like very, very early on.
Awesome. And so, this was again 15 years ago. Take us into the journey of getting going as, I don't want to say this wasn't far from first time entrepreneurs, you and your brother. It sounds like, you had done lots of different ventures, but this was
Yeah, we'd done a few things before, like in between, like, like to the side of Ticket Fairy. My brother also moved to Dubai. He started a couple of companies there. We were kind of we had a real estate. He had a real estate arm for it. He had a digital arm for it. We made some investments, which unfortunately didn't go well in the financial crisis, but that was more down to the market rather than whether the projects were solid or not. And then Ticket Fairy kind of was like the natural, well, let's try and do something really big that harnesses, a lot of the different skills that we've got.
hmm hmm
And we went full time on it in 2013, still bootstrapped, kept getting rejected by VCs. They kept saying that the market was too competitive, or we're trying to do too much, or whatever it was. Then finally got the first check into the company in 2015, which was Justin Can from Twitch. And then we ended up raising a pretty all-star angel round of some of the top entrepreneurs in history, I think. Like Steve Huffman, who's CEO of Reddit, Amin Marjan, who made Farmville, Daniel Gross, who was head of AI at Apple. We brought in some pretty amazing people into the very first round with no prior tech network, so it was all just hustle.
awesome. And
And
where
then we did
where
YC in
where did
2015.
Y Combinator come into this? Yeah.
We did that. So we raised first money February 2015, and then we did YC later that year, that summer.
Okay.
And
Okay.
weirdly, and it's not very normal to say this, but our our little like 485K angel round had angel checks from 4 Y Combinator partners, which is absurd when you think about it now, because we hadn't even done the program.
Okay, so here you are. You certainly had an all-star cast of angel investors, and you were building a product that you believe was going to serve some pretty important needs for these promoters that weren't the big boys.
When you're doing what, say, I did, and what hundreds of thousands of other people do when they run events, you don't come in knowing you come in knowing nothing, and you just have an idea of, the type of audience you want to attract to your events, or the type of music you want to push, or the type of market you want to serve. But really, it's just like, let's gather some people and have some fun, right?
hmm
And with that, it's very rare that you're technical, you have marketing skills, you know how to run ads. Like, like when I first started running events, you couldn't buy ads on Facebook. Like that came 7 years after I ran my first event,
hmm
right? Like you couldn't do that. It was all physical. And so to build the ethos of the company was to build software that creatives can use with encoded best practices, where they don't have to spend years experimenting and learning those things, because they don't have budgets to hire full-time staff that will be able to do that. They don't have the budgets for developers and data scientists and professional marketers. And even like even now, when everything's relatively self-service, it's still not easy to get it right and burn a bunch of money.
Got
So our thing was, you could bring in 10, 15, 20% more in revenue for an independent event, you might actually be pushing them into profit. If you could
it.
add a bunch of things that unlock margin for them, you are now helping them to grow. And if you learn from every client and encode that as features into the platform, then everyone is helping to contribute towards best practices going into the tech.
Got it. Okay. So, couple things I want to hit on. One, you founded this with your brother, and you
Yes.
mentioned that you both brought complementary skills, and I want to hear a little more about that. But I specifically want to hear a little bit more about what it's like to share, because you didn't take different roles or different titles, at least, right? I gather you definitely
We
have
did
different roles.
initially just because we thought that was the convention to take different roles, but it didn't end up making sense, and so we changed it.
Right. So now you're co-CEOs, and you're, in my language, when I coach CEOs, I like to talk about the role as being the role of head of the business. And that being the role of the person who essentially has accountability for getting the right people on the leadership team. And those, leaders are the team that they have to lead and manage, right? But in your case, you're sharing that role. And I wouldn't say that is the conventional wisdom, but I'd love to hear how you have navigated that and how you've made that work, because you've been doing that for a while.
I think it's one of those ones where we are so different in the way we think, but we're so similar when it comes to general principles and morality because we've grown up together.
Hmm.
So you kind of realize that the way you treat people, the way that I guess what feels right, that doesn't change. And we very rarely have differing opinions on that.
Okay.
And then the things that do make us different, they're very different. So I'm kind of like the run around, spontaneous, like I said just tonight, like I wasn't meant to be in New York today, and I randomly ended up on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange tonight. And I have no idea how that ended up happening, but that's what happened. And if you told me that 2 days ago, I would have told you you were insane. And there are probably 1,000 stories like that where I have managed to meet some of the most interesting people in the world completely organically with zero plan, just with a gut feel that I should be somewhere on a certain day and I don't know why.
Mhm.
Or a certain type of people are gathering in a certain location on a certain weekend and I should be there, but I don't know what will happen. And there's a lot of people that cannot live like that. And like my brother is completely different. So like he's a long-term planner with excruciating levels of detail. So I think long-term top level, he thinks about every possible scenario, plays them out in his head, figures out pros and cons, figures out like what could go wrong if XYZ things happen and how to mitigate those. And at least if they haven't been mitigated, like he's already thought about what to do if and when those things happen. And those are two very, very different things
Sure.
that allow us to make decisions. It's very natural when you're trying to make an important decision, like who that decision is most likely to go to because of the type of people that we are.
Hmm. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. How about specifically divvying up, or being clear about, I should say, accountability, and accountability for decisions is one thing, but different parts of the business, different elements that, accountability, the way I see it, can't really be shared because the buck has to stop somewhere. And I think that, as between you and your brother, the two of you might be very clear, but also talk a little bit about how that works with the other people in the company, and how they know, who's accountable for what.
So I think that if the entire company, which is about 40 people, if all 40 people were working out the same office, that would be a very difficult problem.
Hmm.
The way we're set up is that we are distributed kind of, you know, it's not exactly half half, but they're like he lives in Dubai, I'm in San Francisco, and we're literally 12 hours apart. And so
Hmm.
there are certain teams that I deal with daily. There are other teams that he deals with daily, and we don't overlap. Like I might talk to someone in the teams he deals with daily once every 2 weeks or once a month or once every 2 months, and vice versa for him.
Okay.
Other times it's the function of the person. If it's an engineer asking about something and I'm the technical founder, then they might go to me first before they go to him.
Got you. And things like strategy. Who gets the final say, or does it mean that you just don't make the decision until you can agree or find consensus? How does that work?
I think we kind of generally agree that for each type of decision, one person is more suited than the other.
Okay. When it does break
No,
down, then
generally
what happens? You said it's rare, but then
it's
when
rare. I think those scenarios are where you kind of step back and think about it a bit and figure out like where the compromise is. Because I don't there's very, very rare absolutes where it's kind of
mm,
like, no, this is a veto. Like sometimes that might be a case. Like, maybe let's say that he doesn't have visibility over someone's work and wants to fire them,
mm,
just for example, right?
yeah,
And I know that I have more visibility over that person's work, but they're just not very vocal about their work. And so it feels like they're not doing much, right? In that scenario, I can be the source of truth and informed and provide data that he might not have. And
mm,
this will happen the other way around as well.
got it.
And those types of things are pretty good because no one has all the information they need ever. I think you can always do with more information.
For sure. There's
And
no such
so
thing as perfect
if you
information.
can,
So, yeah.
yeah. And the thing is that that kind of means that, one of us might feel very strongly about something, but only within the context of the information we have.
Yeah.
And so if the other then adds some more color, it could change the thinking entirely.
Amazing. Being brothers, I think for some, and I can only imagine myself if I were ever able to have a business with my brother, being brothers would be a liability, I think. But it sounds like it's a real asset in your relationship, and that's great. I think it's a unique relationship from what I've seen to be able to share that CEO role, the head of the business role, and to make it work. So moving on from there, you had told me in a previous conversation that you are poised for a real inflection in the business. Okay.
Last year was a build year, and that was through a few different circumstances. But last year became a build year, and we kind of had a few things on the roadmap that we thought were very important for the direction of the company, but also kind of anticipating some of the ways the industry would change, and not necessarily just the events industry, but also how tech was going to change.
Okay.
And so we had kind of three or four different streams of work going on in the company that the goal was for them to all converge end of 2025, and they ended up mostly converging, and some of it ended up pushing into Q1, but that's what happens.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but the thesis was very much like where we're at right now, and randomly, that's how the world has ended up in the last few weeks. So I think we managed to anticipate it quite well.
Okay. So I get it. Actually, that makes some sense. So last year was not, a progression in terms of where you were, but you were able to make a year where revenue was not as strong as it had been into a year where you were going to build to support revenue coming forward. And it sounds like in a different way. Like earlier on, I think you had mentioned that the revenue was a little bit more spotty. There were ups and there were downs, but now you're building for a future that's going to have more consistent revenue growth. And
Correct.
talk a little bit more about what it is, what would have been the struggles or the challenges to get there, because I think that's what a lot of founders go through as they go from being the scrappy startup to being the scale up that has more consistent projected revenue, or that they're able to project more consistently and
Yeah.
to grow.
So the way we kind of looked at last year was what over the previous years had prevented rapid growth.
Hmm.
And can we kind of looked at things and went, okay, well, sales motion we could have improved. We could have had a bigger sales team, but that's obvious. Then it was like, okay, where are our UX blockers? Where are our barriers to adoption? Where are we losing people when they're testing out the product? Then there was kind of like, well, why do competitors win deals over us? And is it because their tech is better, or is it because they're able to offer better deals, or is it because they have some other advantage? And we figured out that they had some other advantage, and that was providing working capital to
Mm,
the same clients that we were pitching, but we weren't able to provide that working capital. And turns out, and obviously I know this being an event producer, but at big scale, you absolutely need this. That the independent festival producer who's trying to book all their talent and announce all that talent at once also needs to throw down $500,000 or $1 million all at once before they're legally allowed to announce those people.
right.
And so there's massive, massive upfront investment that you have to put in as the event producer, and you don't have anything more than your IP and your brand. Like, you don't own the land your events taking place at. You don't own the venue that the event's taking place at. Very
Mm,
rarely do you. And so you have your IP, but that's not enough collateral for a bank to give you funding.
yeah. Yeah.
So now you're in this rock and a hard place where you might be able to sell some tickets based on your brand, but that might take 5 years before anyone trusts that. So what do you do? And historically, fairly transactional, simple ticketing companies have gotten deals by just saying, I'll write you a $500,000 check. And it's a pay to play industry in many ways.
Okay.
If you don't pay to play, then it's a race to the bottom of pricing industry. And so like neither are good.
Yeah, those are not good options. So talk
Right.
about how you're now solving that.
So we launched a capital product at the end of last year rather than try and raise debt and or raise equity and actually fund those clients using a limited pool of capital at our own
Mhm.
risk. We went big and found private credit that could actually provide that working capital to the kind of more established clients that we wanted to get on board.
Okay. So that
And it's
mean
kind of a win-win where
pivoting a bit to slightly more established clients overall, or making your target customer a little bit
just
more up.
making the target customer bigger, where
Mhm.
like, if we couldn't win it on the strength of the tech alone, we could win it on the strength of way better tech and significant working capital.
Got it. Got it.
And then we kind of figured out that like there were two other areas of the business that would help to further facilitate growth and also just like really go where the industry was going. Being an event producer, especially at any significant scale, you end up doing a lot of manual work. And same as any startup fan, right? It's lots of PDFs, it's lots of spreadsheets, it's
Yeah.
thousands of email threads, tens of thousands of emails. Everything's manual. And so I was lucky enough that we were lucky enough that Sam Altman was running YC when we did YC.
Mm,
And so, there's a little hint of what was due to come. And then in 2020, YC companies were able to get early access to the first version of GPT in OpenAI. And so we'd had 5 years of experimenting with like what agents could become when
yeah.
the models couldn't do anything.
Right.
So as we're kind of like figuring out like what's being done manually, I've got a roadmap document from 4 years ago, and the top bullet point is the conversational dashboard where I wanted to turn anything in our UI into a prompt and get it to execute it. And only now there are agent frameworks that let you do that in a reliable way with tools and skills and whatever else, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like we were pretty far ahead when it came to this stuff, but the tech wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
And so
Now it's there.
kind of last
Yeah.
year was like build it out. And then we were kind of like, okay, well, if you're providing working capital to someone, like what's going to help safeguard that money when needs to get repaid? Well, we could just be the bank and be in the flow of funds. And so, we spent 2 years negotiating banking rails.
Yeah.
So then now we have similar capabilities to Ramp and Brex and Mercury all baked into the platform with like an agent can read an invoice from an inbox now and make it as a recipient in the banking using an internal API call and it's ready to
Yeah.
pay. And, like all these things where, you are doing manual grunt work. It might, an artist booking might come in and it says that this weird piece of equipment needs to get rented for their performance. And now a voice agent can call a rental place near the venue and actually get a quote.
Hmm. Got it. I love it. I mean, as everyone's talking about SaaS getting commoditized and AI really changing the name of the game. You were experimenting with that early on. It sounds like very early, if it's 4 years ago. And now you're really ready to run, leveraging AI, leveraging banking
Right.
rails, and transforming the business. I mean, we could go on certainly on that line of discussion for hours, but given the amount of time we have for today, I want to shift to a segment that I do with all of the entrepreneurs that I interview, and it's sort of some quick fire entrepreneurial hack kind of questions. If that's okay. What's one book
Yeah, absolutely.
every entrepreneur should read?
I'm going to say a non-tech book, which is
Mhm.
Shantaram.
Ah,
And that's really just because it's one of the books in my life that has made me imagine things
mhm,
that I didn't think I'd be imagining. And sometimes you just need that non-business, what's the real world
mhm.
perspective.
I like that. What's one thing you do every morning to set yourself up for success?
This is tricky because I don't know often where I'm going to wake up and I don't know.
Perhaps you're more of a night person.
I mean, I'll be honest, like the recent times have involved working until 4 a.m. and then having calls at 7 a.m. again. And
Uh,
I used to have the luxury of taking an afternoon nap and I don't even have that anymore. So the the unpredictability, even at this stage of the company, I don't think I have an answer to that.
okay. Hey, you know what? Maybe you'll get your morning routine back at some point. What's a tool or app you can't live without?
At the moment, Claude Code.
Okay, well that's a hot one. What daily habit keeps you grounded?
So 2021 to 2024, 25, I moved to Mexico and we decided that Mexico was going to be a good market for us and really, and that happened. We hired a team there. We got a bunch of clients and every day for the first 6 to 8 hours of the day, I would be barefoot, feet dug into the sand, doing my calls in a very theoretically stressful environment if I was just looking at the workload, but it completely got balanced out by being grounded, actually physically grounded and
Mhm.
having that level of peace with the extremities of running a startup.
That's awesome. I mean, nature has a
Mm.
amazing way of grounding us, and I miss the days. I've been living in Shanghai for 21 years now, but before that, I was living in Manhattan Beach and started my day almost every day with a run on the beach. And I remember, yeah, the feel of the sand under my feet. That has an amazing quality to ground
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's not a complex thing, right? It's a very simple principle.
yep, it is. And what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
If you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice.
Haha. I like that. I like that a lot.
Because if you ask for money, invariably someone's going to go, "Well, I know how to run my business, your business better than you do. So here's all the things you're doing wrong." But if you ask someone for their opinion, and you kind of play to their expertise and ego at the same time, you're not doing it in a selfless way. You're still trying to learn something. That will often trigger them thinking that they could contribute well to your business, and why wouldn't they have some upside in that contribution, and they should put some capital in.
Perfect. One last question for today. What's one piece of advice you'd give to entrepreneurs who are just starting on their journey now?
The one that I got given that I thought was really annoying,
Hmm.
but it's not annoying. It's actually true, which is focus on building your product and talking to your customers, and don't worry about all the frivolous things that you think you're supposed to do as a startup.
Mm.
Just focus on that.
Keep your eye on the ball.
Yep.
Eh, timeless advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining the show today, Ritesh. You've got some amazing stories, and frankly, I know we could do several episodes, particularly getting into where AI is changing your business. But I really appreciate everything you've shared today.
No, thanks so much. Hopefully, I'm not repeating the same things other people have said, and there's a little bit of a unique insight in there.
Absolutely, there is. And to my listeners, we've got many more amazing guests lined up. Please subscribe, leave feedback, and share this episode in your feeds. Until next time. Thanks for listening. Remember, entrepreneurship isn't just about spotting opportunities. It's about taking disciplined action to bring them to life. Hope you'll join again next time as we continue to unpack the complexities of entrepreneurism.